Hey everyone, I'm Rushlock, and this is a brief personal finance video on personal savings, just a savings account. Very simple concept and topic, but very commonly overlooked. Working at the bank for years, dealing with customers, dealing with checking accounts primarily, I rarely had to interact with savings accounts because most people that I dealt with didn't have them. Or if they did, they had the bare minimum to keep the account open and things like that. When I started, I worked at a credit union for a local school system, and I can't say that all credit unions have this, but all the ones that I've ever seen will have what's called a share draft account, which is your checking. And then you have a member account, a base account, which is your savings account. And there's usually some kind of like minimum balance you must maintain to keep the account active and open. For the ones I worked at, it was $25. You would open an account, you have an available balance, and you have an actual balance, and it would always be a $25 differential. And that's because the $25 needed to stay in there. And more often than I would expect, that actually came up. We'd have people come in like, hey, I really need to get 20 out, and I'll bring it back on payday. And I would see far more common than I would expect going into the job, just how often things like that would happen. And of course, we would always work with them, how long they'd been with us and our confidence level that we would see them that coming week. We'd make a determination because we really weren't supposed to do it. It was definitely a policy we weren't supposed to work around and things like that. Not because we didn't want to give them their money, but because it would create a lot of notifications and red flags and reports, and it's caused a lot of button clicks at work for that week, or if it was at the end of the month or something like that. So where possible, we would try to avoid it, but we would work with people as much as we could. But savings overall as a topic is what I wanted to focus on, and I like to try to stay away from absolutes as much as possible when talking about personal finance, because someone will always find, hey, my example situation is definitely outside that parameter, and that's fine, but a very, very broad general rule of thumb. You should always have about 3 months of income set aside. That doesn't mean that you should go 3 months and not spend any money and hoard and save and fix that tomorrow, but maybe your goal for the year, maybe your goal for the next 2 years, whatever the case may be, hopefully you're not starting at zero, but if you are, so be it. Maybe your goal for this year is simply get half that or even a quarter of it. Set some kind of goal, but having 3 months of income sitting in the bank is a pretty standard goal to have. I don't want to say expectation, but some people will listen to this, and you might be in a situation where you've been working at the same job for 5 years. You feel very secure, very everything's at routine, and you can imagine working there for the next 10, 20, whatever. Some people are in industries, and this is becoming more and more common now, where you're lucky to work in the same place for 2 to 5 years, and then circumstances are just going to require you to change jobs. It could be for advancement. It could be for just staying in the same industry. A lot of our community obviously is gaming based, and from what I see usually on social media and conversations I have off air, it's pretty common for 2 to 5 years is about all you'll see with a studio, and it's time to move on to the next project. And so I imagine folks in that industry would definitely see the value in this practice if you have the discipline to do it. And that 3 months can be a huge difference buffer for, especially if you have, the difference between no dependence versus having dependence. I'm sure those of you with kids can tell everyone else that, things happen far more often than you would like, and unexpected expenses do occur. And something that a lot of people do to replace savings, so instead of having a savings account, they'll just say, and this is what customers would tell me, they're like, oh, but I have a credit card for that. And what they mean is that instead of having money set aside, which is boring, right? It's just money just sitting. That's not exciting. That's not entertaining. That's not perceived as a value to them. It's just collecting dust. Because interest rates now are pitiful. This is going off on a tangent, but 30, 40 years ago, you got money sitting in the bank and you made a relevant return on your investment due to interest rates for savings accounts, but those days are long gone. So money now sitting in savings accounts are very, very, very dull, very boring for consumers. And they've replaced it with somehow being tricked by finance companies, credit card companies, that's a good idea just to have an open line of credit with a credit card. They'll say, I've got $5,000 on it, I've got $10,000 on it, I can go, I can live off that credit card in the short term if I need to, and I'll be fine. And it can be difficult sometimes for folks to make the connection until you sit them down and try to explain it to them directly. It'd be much better to have $3,000 in the bank or $5,000 in the bank than to have an open line of credit card that is your go-to source for oh crap, something bad has happened. I need to solve it. Because let's say you go into that savings account and you pay out, um, you know, car trouble, random child costs that what you weren't expecting. Um, that money comes out of the account and it's done. It's over, and you can replenish it over time. You're kind of in an indirect way making payments to yourself to replenish that savings account. Let's say you swipe the credit card instead, and now you're paying that back to another company, and you're paying an interest rate on top of that. And some people might see like, well, I can make a minimum payment. I can really scale down when I need to it'll lessen the burden in the short term, and that's true. In the short term, that is absolutely accurate, and that's how they get you. They get you focused on the short term impact of it. Like, hey, if, you have to go spend $2,000 on something unexpected, that's fine. Pay us $25, $30 a month, and it'll be like it never happened. And things like that are the same way that they being consumers will kind of trick themselves or make themselves unaware of daily expenditures, right? We go back to the whole example of getting your coffee every day or getting your lunch every day and things like that. Some people will go to the far extreme, like, well, that means I can't have lunch every day, and it's like, no, you just need to find an alternative that is much less expensive because it's a daily occurrence. Same thing with small payments on financing, like a credit card like that, where you've used it for an oh-no moment, and now you find yourself paying a minimum payment that is basically just paying the interest off. The balance or the principal, the initial cost never actually comes down, and you find yourself paying on that for 5-10 years instead of maybe 1 or 2, and it can be sometimes difficult to communicate or clarify for someone the value of spending your own money to solve these problems as opposed to just swiping your credit card. It doesn't mean that you should never do it. It just shouldn't be your first go-to. An open line of credit, a credit card for emergencies, is not a replacement for a savings account. It can be for a supplement. Maybe in the moment, you need to, because usually savings accounts are less liquid, right? You have to go to the bank and actually withdraw the money. There's not a card associated with it, or you have to go on your online app and move the money from the savings to the checking, and maybe that'll be instant. Maybe it'll have a certain amount of pending time or things like that. Who knows what security blocks you or your bank have put in place for your own protection as well. It is mechanically easier just to swipe a card, and it's fine to go ahead and swipe that card for an emergency and then use your savings to pay that off, at the end of the month. Just not everyone has that level of discipline. But overall, this video is just about the value of savings, how often it is overlooked. People very commonly dismiss it and will have the bare minimums in there. This is from a perspective of just dealing with customers for years and really being surprised at how quickly or how unaware folks would be of the money coming in and out of their checking, and that savings account was never touched. And again, just a summary, the rule of thumb, have about 3 months set back of whatever your income is monthly. You want to have 3 months of that set aside. If you're starting at 0, that's fine. Don't get discouraged. Set a goal for the end of the year. Like, all right, I want to have a month's income set aside by the end of the year, and the next year I'll be a second month. Because if you go like for the end of the year, unless you can set back a quarter of your money, there's no way you can do it in 1 year. But yeah, definitely have the savings account. Work towards that 3-month value, and then reassess. Do not use a credit card to replace the idea of having a savings or a buffer or a nest egg. They're fine as a supplemental tool, but don't rely on a credit card entirely to get you out of trouble. All that will do is usually get you into more trouble than you were in the first place. It'll just delay it and stall it. But as always, if you've had questions, comments, if you have personal stories you want to share with it, feel free to put them in the comments. You can also post them on Discord and tag me, whatever's easier for you. But we'll see you all next time.